Um, so, Graham, we are here to talk about and to celebrate your career. You recently retired from your role at IMG. When your colleagues there recorded some messages for you, which we'd like to share with everyone here today. Amongst all of the, all of the Mickey taking, there's clearly a lot of affection there and a lot of respect for you as well. You must have really enjoyed your time at IMG.
Really enjoyed it. I mean, we're very lucky, aren't we, to work in sport. I was a pretty good sportsman, not very good at anything. So the next best is to work with professional sportsmen and sportswomen. And I loved going into work. I loved going into work every day. There was a buzz around, especially when we moved to Stockley Park with Premier League football and tennis and snooker and so much more. It was a great privilege to work with some of these guys and plenty more besides. So yeah, it was. I loved every minute of it.
And just to be clear, you've not retired completely.
No, I was warned by a lot of people. Actually called me and said, whatever you do, don't stop, because you've been working 7 days a week for 15 years. It's not going to do you any good to stop. So I set up a little consultancy company. I've wrestled with the original name, and I came up with Fry Sports. And I'm going to do a little bit of work, a couple of days a week maybe.
Yeah. So during the video, there was lots referred to about the breadth of your experience. Can we go back to the start? Tell us where it all began. What was your route into the broadcasting industry?
Well, I saw an advert. This is a really crazy story, but I saw an advert at the BBC on the board outside the canteen there for an assistant producer in BBC Sport. And I thought, this is absolutely the job for me. I didn't apply for it because I was so frightened of not getting it. I didn't apply, but it came up again 6 months later. I wasn't so stupid the second time. Got into Grandstand. I've always said to the people at IMG that every production team is only as good as its weakest link, and I was certainly the weakest link when I joined Grandstand. And I can't thank the guys and girls there enough. They spent so much time coaching me. I worked on pretty much every sport that European sport could put up. I knew about camera positions. I heard directors talk back. I understood quite a lot about how sports were covered on television, and it set me up so well for the future. And I got a few roles with big productions actually in the BBC, and then I think it was 1989 I got an offer to go to BSB.
Yeah.
And it was an offer I felt I couldn't turn down at the time.
Yeah. So I suppose the world of broadcasting and the world of sports in particular was changing with the introduction of BSB.
Well, when I left the BBC, it was quite funny because the head of sport, whose name was Jonathan Martin, said to me, I'm sorry you're leaving, but just as long as you know that you're going to go and produce all the highlights, so we're going to do the live. And I think, well, funny enough, I've got a funny feeling it might be the other way around. And it's not totally true, but it's partially true. So I went to Champion TV, and I think most people say that if the square had worked, it might have been BSB that survived and not Sky, but it turned out to be the other way around. And my demise was quite swift there because we had an open plan office, and I had a proper office on one side of the building, and David Hill, who was like the doyen of sports production, was on the other side. And he said, mate, when you do Wimbledon, I want you to run a duck through the screen anytime a player loses set 6-love. And because he was famous for running a duck when somebody was out for naught in cricket. And I said, I'm not going to do that, David. And he said, mate, I'm telling you to do it. I said, I'm not doing it. I said, if you want a fast route for losing the Wimbledon contract, then run a duck through the screen, but I'm not going to do it. And I didn't. And when Sky effectively took over BSB, I went to David's office to hear my fate. Not surprisingly, he didn't decide to take me to Sky. So I went on holiday and then got offered an opportunity at IMG.
Yeah. And so when you were at IMG, what were some of the landmark moments for you?
There were an awful lot. I'm probably going to forget quite a few major ones, so forgive me. But I think when IMG and Canal Plus won the rights to the Premier League back in 1997, the overseas rights, which gave us an opportunity to do some production, and it was very basic production. I think there was 3 camera coverage, E&G coverage of most matches. I think they were offering 1 or 2 matches internationally at the time. And then went up to 6 cameras to 8 cameras. So that was one landmark, and the second one, there was a broadcaster workshop which is held every year at the end of the season. And all the broadcasters said, we must have more content. We want content every day. And so we came up with the idea of doing a news program. And shortly after, I thought, if we're doing a news program, then why can't we put together a fully blown channel? And we went to the Premier League in the winter of 2009, and they thought about it for 4 months. And in April of 2010, said, if you can do it for this amount of money, we'll go for it. And there was a real rush. There was a huge rush. We built a studio in the front reception of our building on the Hogarth roundabout, and we launched a channel/content service. And when I look at it now, I watched it from home. It's stayed quite similar for a number of years, and now Nick Morgan and his team have taken it to new heights, and I'm just so proud of it. So proud of it.
And tell us also about the relationship between HBS and IMG.
Well, I think you've heard Dan and Dave talk about it already, but when ISL went bust, I think it was in 2001, I was aware that the ISL production unit were going to provide a lot of support for HBS in terms of support programming, and of course that all just blew up in its face very, very suddenly. I thought, well, we've got a lot of production people who work in football, but in front of IMG on exactly the best of buddies, they were fighting tooth and nail for every rights deal that was coming up. And I thought there wasn't much chance, but they came to us and said, would you like to supply people to the World Cup in Korea, Japan in 2002? And we spent about 100 people there, and we just gelled, and that's another major landmark for me, because what happened after that, and we discussed working together on the Asian Games in 2006, and we worked in other Asian Games and Asian Winter Games, Rugby World Cup in 2019, as you've heard, Rugby World Cup that's going on now. And in 21 years, they're great guys, Francis Tellier, Dan Miodownik, Luc-Antoine Chariel, and we had a couple of good guys too, in Dave Shield, Mike Wilmot, gelled like I've never gelled with, especially when you think that you could argue they're the old enemy. It was brilliant. We never had a crossword in over 20 years, and still to this day.
So how did you sort of foster and maintain those relationships? And I guess connected to that as well is how would you kind of describe your approach or your management style as well?
Well, in terms of the HBS relationship, I mean, you've heard what's happening now. We're using Stockley Park as a remote centre. Unfortunately, with big event host broadcasts, they don't come around quick enough. They're every 4 years, and not all of them are there to be won. But I guess I had a good relationship with all the companies that we work with, whether it's the Football League, the European Tour. With Channel 4, we did quite a lot work with Channel 4, and we won the Channel 4 Racing, which was another major moment for me, because when I left the BBC, I thought I'd kiss goodbye to the World Cup, to the Commonwealth Games, to the Grand National, to the Open Golf Championship, and there we a few years later doing all of them. And then internally, as you've heard, I like to have a laugh and a joke, and of course it's a serious business we work in, but you can't be serious all of the time. And I had a laugh with people. They knew they can come and see me. I had an open door policy. Anybody can come and see me whenever they wanted. I go and meet people on the shop floor, so to speak, whenever I could, find out what they were doing, go into galleries, watch what they're doing, travel to as many OBs as I could. And I just think being honest with people, so whether it's staff or federations, I always had a rule with the Premier League that I'm phoning you to tell you that I thought we had a really good show today, or I'm phoning to tell you that we had a big mistake. And just being honest with them, I think, really helped in the long term, and that was my approach to pretty much everything.
And you spoke about the growth of the Premier League. Where do you see it going next? Coverage of top-tier sports, and how something that's been picked up on in previous sessions around engaging that next generation of fans. Well, how do you see that playing?
Yeah, I mean, just keeping the Premier League slightly to one side, because I think they're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And, we've now got a big digital division producing all sorts of digital content for different viewers, and we're getting much better access than we ever had before. But I do think, I think Ursula talked about the tiered system. I think the really big events are going to thrive still. I think the Olympics, the Euros, the World Cup, the Rugby World Cup, Sky's coverage of football and cricket, which I think is fantastic, will always improve and look better, and they'll innovate. But I think further down the chain, it's a lot harder, and some sports will struggle to maintain where they are, and others maybe go slightly backwards. But I do think it's a really good time for people working in sports production, because I think there are more opportunities now than there ever have been. The only issue is that some of them aren't going to make very much money. And I think the competition's going to increase because the likes of the facilities companies who are, because of remote production, the trucks aren't being used as much as they used to be. They're opening up remote hubs, and they may well become production competitors of ours one day. But in terms of what you can do for the next generation, obviously the amount of digital production that actually, even since I've left, I'm being asked to, could we go and film X and Y? There are so many young digital companies opening up. We talked about doing a kids show on for the Premier League. I think the problem with the Premier League channel, it goes all around the world in different time zones, and you've got to really try and produce a show for the day, and once the day is half done, the show's half done too. And what's 9 o'clock in the morning in Amsterdam is pretty late in the day in Singapore, and in the evening it's not a kids show at 9 o'clock at night in Australia and New Zealand. So it is difficult, but I think the digital team at Premier League Productions are doing a pretty good job as far as the Premier League's concerned.
Now, at the start of today's event, I said that this day is all about showcasing success, which of course it is. But I think we'd also like to hear about perhaps when things haven't quite gone according to plan, and maybe some of the, I'll use the word disasters, might have occurred. So can you
Well, I have to say that there haven't been that many. I haven't been involved in that many disasters in the last few years, because I was such a pain in the neck. I used to phone up all the producers, all the technical guys, all the time to say, have you remembered to do this? Have you remembered to do that? And of course, they had more often than not. But in my early BBC days, I had a bit of a disaster on my first ever outside broadcast, where I went to an athletics event with a director called John Shrewsbury, and some of you will have heard of him. And anybody who's worked on athletics knows that the track events take centre stage and the field events get woven in between the races. And I was recording Jan Zelezny in the javelin, and some of you might have heard of him, maybe others in here won't have done. But so the director says to the commentators, guys, we've got the lead javelin throw, we're going to spin that in next. Now, anybody over 50 or even 60 who's worked in 2-inch knows it's pretty difficult to queue up a 2-inch tape, because you don't even see the pictures for the first 8 seconds of the 10-second run-up. And so they ran the throw-in, and the commentator said, "Here's Jan Zelezny. This is long. This is very, very long." And of course, most javelins go the length of a football pitch. This one dropped in the centre circle. Unfortunately, I queued up the round 2 throw and not the round 3 throw. But it did actually teach me a hell of a good lesson. And afterwards, I was told by the director, he said, "Look, you've got to be much more careful the way you log stuff and this, that, and the other." But he handled it in a really nice way. And I've always remembered that when I was working in a senior position at IMG, is just work out how to tell people they've done a good job. And don't be too destructive on people when they've made a mistake, because I've heard shouting and screaming until for whenever in American trucks and everything. I think that must shatter people's confidence. And I thought, I'm never going to do anything like that. I've had a lot of funny moments, obviously, and Steve Davis obviously pointed some of them out. But I did have quite an unusual incident, actually, that actually made The Guardian. We were producing a golf tournament in Germany, and on the Tuesday before the tournament, I was producing the tournament. They wanted to have a skins game involving the 4 top players of the event. I think it was Montgomery Woosnam, Bernard Langer, and I can't remember, the Sandy Lyle, I think it might have been. And we were shooting it on 4 ENG cameras, and I had 2 cameras on the first hole at the tee, one up the fairway and one on the green, and we were going to flip-flop the cameras. And we shot the tee shots, and 2 of the cameras came up to me and said, "We've got a problem. We seem to be running out of battery already. We're going to have to nip back and change the battery." So I said, "Well, do it as quickly as you can." So we took the second shots and the putts, and the guy came off the green and said, "My battery is running low too." It turned out that the company, and I'm not going to look around and see whether it was with the guys in the room, but forgot to charge the cameras overnight. And so we had basically a relay of running out batteries. And we had a young logger who had a bit of a stutter, and I said, "I'm not going to name him, it's not fair," but I said, "Will you bring out some more batteries as quick as you can, because we're going to struggle to keep covering the golf." And they ran out again, and I called him and said, "Will you bring them out?" He said, "Graham, I'm logging the golf." And I said, "Unless you bring out the bloody tapes, there won't be any golf to log." And so we went off that night to edit, and we had a massive problem with the graphics. We started at 10 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock, and I went back to my hotel room, and at 2 in the morning, I got a phone call from the graphics guy saying, "Graham, we've seemed to run out of fuel with the generator. Could you pop your head out of the window of your hotel room, see if the petrol station opposite is still open?" So I put my head out, and the lights were on at the entrance. I couldn't see the petrol station. I'm in a pair of underpants, and I thought, it's 2 in the morning. There's going to be nobody around. So I ran down the stairs, went out this massive oak door, through a sliding glass door into the road to see that actually the petrol station was shut. So I came back, the glass doors had shut, and the oak door was still in the process of shutting. And I was standing there trying to open this damn thing. I got it open and got to the oak door. It's also shut. And of course I realised the bell for the oak door was outside the glass door. So I had to go back outside again, got back in, looked through the little glass hole, and nobody came for about 2 or 3 minutes. Then the owner came in his light blue pyjamas with a little blue hat on, opened the door and looked at me and just said, "I hope you enjoyed your evening." And so, yeah, and that made The Guardian for some reason.
Brilliant. Fame. Well, listen, I'm not sure where we're going to go from stories about you running around in your underpants at night time.
Not a pretty sight.
No. So, listen, it's been fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much for sharing all of those stories. I'd like now to invite David Shield to join us on stage, please.
Thanks, George. I was just going to say a couple of words about Graham, because we spent, well, the point in his story where he joined BSB, I also joined from the BBC. So we've known each other a long, long time. And since 2008 or thereabouts, Graham's been my boss, which is quite tricky because he's always also been my customer, the way we work. So that is a little bit of a challenge. He's mentioned many of the great events we've done together, but I was trying to think what my favourite was. And with our friends from Sunset and Vine who are here, we co-produced the Paralympics in 2012, which was like a highlight of all sporting events for me. Now, a lot of you probably know this, but Graham is affectionately known as Rasher for obvious reasons. Except when we were looking at budgets, which we was always looking to cut down, so he then became Slasher with the red pen. But the important thing that he's done and made why IMG, I think, has been so successful is the relationships he nurtured with customers, federations, broadcasters, competitors. We've done lots of things jointly with companies that you'd think might be competitors. And actually what's been fantastic is he has the same attitude to all his staff. I think there's probably 600 staff at Stockley Park. And we felt like an extended family. So Graham, thank you. I'm honoured to have worked with you. And before I present Graham with the SVG Europe Outstanding Contribution to European Sports Broadcasting Award, can you join me in showing your appreciation?
Well, thank you very much for that, and thank you, George, for giving me not too hard a ride, and thank you, SVG, for putting on today and giving me the opportunity to pick up this great award. And when I look at some of the names who are on the list, Barry Johnson, legend in everything he did to do with CTV and later with EMG, Francis Tellier, the man of the World Cup since 1998, I believe, and Manolo Romero, who we all miss, who's changed the landscape of Olympic broadcasting. Being put together with those guys, I guess I must have done something right somewhere along the line. I'd like to thank a few people, and I'm going to go back to 40 years ago when I did join the BBC, and I can't thank the people there enough for the help they gave me. I don't think I'd be standing here but for that help. I left a much more rounded sort of producer, working in many, many sports. The BBC was a great place to learn, a great place to work, and it still is, by the way. The next I'd like to thank two people who you won't know. I lost my wife to cancer in 2015 and was going to stop. I just couldn't face working again, and given what they were going through, my daughter Jackie and my son Chris, they gave me so much support and cajoled me back to work and have kept me going ever since. So I've got to say a big thank you to them. And lastly, but definitely not least, 500 of you at IMG. I've got to thank Dave, of course, a key member of the senior management team with John Hollywood, who I always thought was my best ever signing, our director of production, Nick Morgan, who's turned Premier League Productions into something very, very special. But it's the 500 people who work in facilities, IMG Studios, and the production team who've given everything. We've had a lot of fun together. They're enthusiastic people, they're committed people. I was always told in the BBC, Graham, don't make every show like the FA Cup final. Don't have to be that good. And I thought, well, why not? And I think that was the attitude that all the production team and all the facilities team took into this. So to those people, you're very much a part of this, and I thank them all very much. Thank you.